When might the family want to have a bank or trust company as the conservator, trustee, or executor? So, and what's the difference between a professional fiduciary and a bank or trust company?
Okay, what we're going to do here is go back to the origin of this whole thing is where the people creating the trust or the will or the power of attorney are advising their client. Mm-hmm. So the discussion that they should have is what's appropriate to manage this particular estate. Mm-hmm. And one of the core issues that I would bring up here, the difference between a professional fiduciary and a bank, would be size. And in this particular case, size does matter.
Yes.
And for very large estates, and I was involved peripherally with an estate with assets in excess of $100 million, it was more appropriate to have a bank with the controls and the oversight that a bank has rather than having a professional fiduciary involved. Mm-hmm. So in those respects, it's very important. One of the other factors would be the longevity of the trust. How long is this trust going to last? Because if the trust is going to be in existence to do what I would call a probate administration, collect assets, distribute them out, then really if the fiduciary is in their 50s or something like that, they can do it. There's not a longevity issue. If it's a trust for a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old for their lifetime, you potentially got a 20, 30, 40-year trust. Again, more important to have a bank involved because they have the longevity dealing with that beneficiary, the assets, the administration over a long period of time, which may be very difficult to do for a professional fiduciary. The banks have another tremendous advantage, whether it's a trust company that's organized under the banking regulators within the state or the FDIC. They have a lot of audit capability, or actually a requirement within there, with the federal auditors, the state auditors, their internal banking auditors. So there are a good amount of checks and balances within the bank itself. Pluses and minuses, some people really like having an individual. They could quite possibly name a chain of professional fiduciaries or give the fiduciary the ability to name a successor fiduciary, somebody who's obviously licensed, has a certain amount of experience. So you could get a chain of fiduciaries to fulfill the same role. Because if a fiduciary gets hit by a truck, they're no longer signing anything. If a trust officer at a bank gets hit by a truck, it's very unfortunate, of course, but there is another trust officer at the bank that can step in to sign the checks. So you do have that longevity with a bank trust company that you do not have with an individual fiduciary.
Right. So a lot of assets, dynasty trust, probably a bank or a trust company. And then, but maybe grandma and grandpa, and this thing is going to be settled out to family members within a few years. It sounds more like the professional fiduciary might be a better fit.
Yes, yeah. And that's not always true. I had a trust that I've administered since 1997. Mm-hmm. So that's going back a few years.
Yeah.
So that's almost my entire career as a professional fiduciary, where the elder just lived a very good, long life. Uh-huh. And when we came up to the point where the elder finally passed away, at that point we had some appreciated real estate to sell, and our very good wise CPA said, well, Richard, you really should keep a tax reserve for 4 years. Mm-hmm. Because
might be audited or whatever.
Yeah, so you can get through the audit period. So that's been quite a long-lived trust, and the beneficiaries are very concerned that they've got to wait another 4 years for their final distribution. We're not keeping the whole trust, of course. So I have dealt with some trusts over quite a number of years.